Could Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse be on the hot seat as we head into this offseason? According to a new report from Brian WIndhorst, both the Sixers GM and head coach could be entering their final year with the Sixers if things are just as disappointing as they were last season. So we're going to dive into what Windy had to say and my thoughts on each of them and how safe their jobs are with the 76ers. But before we get into it, I want to set a goal on today's show. We are closing in on 21.3K subscribers. We are 41 subs away. We haven't picked up 40 plus subs on a video in quite a while. So can we do it on today's show? Be sure to hit that sub button if you want Sixers videos all year long. And as we head into this very important offseason, and without further ado, let's get into today's show. So, Daryl Morey, Nick Nurse, obviously coming off a very disappointing year for everybody involved with the Philadelphia 76ers, and people have started to question how long their leash could be with their jobs with the 76ers. And we've talked about this on the show before, but now Brian WIndhorst, ESPN, said just the other day that this very well could be their last years in Philadelphia. What I would say to both Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse right now is you have no margin for error. If next year isn't an excellent year, I would say the hottest seats in the NBA right now are probably Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey, the hottest seats in the entire NBA. But look, it makes sense, right? Obviously, last year was unacceptable. We've talked plenty about what happened last year. I don't need to go into detail about just how disappointing last year was, but blame is everywhere. Nobody is void of blame, and that includes Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse. Morey made the signings of a lot of older veteran players thinking they wanted some playoff experience. They didn't even get to the playoffs, so none of it mattered. And a lot of those older guys they signed ended up getting hurt and not playing a lot of games. And then Nick Nurse, it's tough to gauge the job he did with all the injuries, but certainly had some questionable decision makings at times. Now, heading into next season, this team's going to be very desperate, right? From the ownership, in this instance, putting some pressure on Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse to perform, to Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse, each with their own respective jobs, trying to do whatever it takes to not just win games, because teams are trying to win games every year for the most part, but keep their jobs at this point. Morey, going into the offseason, what moves is he going to make? Nick Nurse, how does he manage now? Hopefully having everybody back from injury and getting this team to play as a cohesive unit. And the players as well, I expect to see desperation out of them because of what happened last year. We've heard a lot of the guys like Tyrese Maxey, who's normally so upbeat and positive, say how much of a struggle this year was and how they need to rebound and bounce back. So this team going to be desperate headed into next year. And ownership, they want to win now. Ownership signed off on the Paul George signing last offseason. They signed off on the Joel Embiid extension last offseason. Those are moves you make when you want to compete for a championship now. And even with how this year went, they still have that same mindset. So they're not going to sit around and wait for things to happen. If they don't see results as soon as this year, whether there's injuries or not, I do expect some changes to be made. Now, some people might be asking, well, why weren't changes made this year if they're so desperate to win and they want to get all this done now? Why wasn't Morey fired? Why wasn't Nurse fired after what happened this year? Look, I think because this was the first year with this, new core you have with Paul George in the mix, I don't think it's very fair to fire Coach GM after just 1 year because of the circumstances, because of the injuries and how much those played a role in the season. And especially for Nurse as well, so respected. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to fire them after just 1 year with this new core. And firing Nurse as a whole just doesn't make a lot of sense to me either, even if you think about him potentially being on the hot seat heading into this season. He's such a well-respected head coach. What he did with the Sixers in his first year in 2023-24, I thought was pretty impressive, and he's had to deal with so many injuries. He doesn't put the roster together. He can't control really who's on the team. He has to deal with what he has, and I thought with a lot of the young players this year, like Justin Edwards, Adem Bona, what we saw from Jared McCain early on was pretty impressive. Now, I'm going to get into more of this Nick Nurse, Daryl Morey debate. Do each of them deserve to be on the hot seat? But I want to hear from you first. Whose seat do you think is hotter as we get into the offseason? Daryl Morey, type DM, or Nick Nurse, type NN down in the comment section. Let me know who you think is more likely to potentially be fired. For me, it's Daryl Morey, and I don't think it's particularly close for the reasons I mentioned about Nick Nurse, where, he, I thought, has done a good job and has showed good things coaching and developing some of these young guys, which has sometimes been a knock on Nick Nurse. And I thought, at least last year, he did a better job managing the game, making in-game adjustments. For Daryl Morey, you're the one who puts this whole roster together, right? And I'm going to get into more of that here in just a second. But first, got to tell you guys about a great deal over at Fanatics. You can get 76ers jerseys on sale. Any jersey you want, ranging from 25% off up to 50+% off. I've seen some of these jerseys. So if you go to chatsports.com/76jerseys, you can browse through all the different options they have available, all different styles, throwback jerseys like AI, Julius Erving, current players like Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes. You can go through and see because they're all going to be discounted for a limited time. Again, anywhere from 25% off to, I think I saw this Tyrese Maxey City Edition jersey, 50% off. So do not wait because it's not going to be a deal for much longer. Go to chatsports.com/76jerseys. I'll have that link in the comments section and in the description of today's video. Again, you can get current players, you can get throwback players, whatever you like. Just be sure to do it quickly. Back to Daryl Morey. Look, he's the one who constructs the roster. And heading into this last offseason, signing guys like Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, Paul George as well, you can lump into this. All these older players, all these veterans clearly backfired, right? So that's a knock on him and what his vision and his plan was for this season. Because you can say, and I've said this before, the injuries are sort of an excuse. And while you can't control injuries, obviously, you can do what you can to minimize them. And with them signing a lot of these older players, that's just naturally more bound to happen to guys who have played more minutes and more years in the NBA. So I think Daryl Morey really should be on the hotter seat than Nick Nurse. And going into this offseason, I think he has to deliver on his goal and his promise that he made for this organization, which is to get younger, get more athletic, and to make sure they can survive throughout a full season rather than trying to rely on lots of veterans. And we've already seen that a little bit in the trade where they sent out Reggie Jackson for Jared Butler. Of course, they sent out Caleb Martin for Quentin Grimes. So I think that he will, and he has been already prioritizing young guys. Hopefully they keep that pick, but he has to make do on his promise. And if this team doesn't perform next year, that's going to be a reflection on him. And I do think Daryl Morey will be gone if the Sixers miss the playoffs once again next season, even if there are some excuse me. Wow, that was terrible. What just happened to me, baby? Some substantial injuries. There we go. I gotcha. Now, talking about Nick Nurse, right? What is Nick Nurse supposed to do? He doesn't control who's on the team. He just gets the guys that he has and puts them in the best position to win. And obviously, they didn't win a lot of games this year, right? There's no secret. But I thought he did a good job developing guys like Justin Edwards. I thought Jared Butler played well. Jared McCain. Adem Bona really came on towards the end of the year. We saw some good play, even like someone like Lonnie Walker, who came in towards the end of the season, didn't play a whole lot, but looked pretty decent when he was out there. Now, I want to throw it back to Nick Nurse's first year with the Sixers, which was last year in 2023-2024. They started off that year, just last season, very strong. Before the All-Star break, and this is before the Joel Embiid injury as well, Sixers were playing well. 6th in offensive rating, 12th in defensive rating, 7th in net rating, and they were at the top of the Eastern Conference standings. So I think you really have to look at that sample size and how the team was looking. They were moving the ball. The offense was looking good. Nick Nurse was making good in-game adjustments. And then Embiid gets hurt, and after the All-Star break last year, falls off a cliff. Offensive rating fell to 22nd. Defense was still good. That's Nick Nurse's calling card. Net rating fell to 17th. But when this team was healthy and playing at full strength last year, Joel Embiid was on his way to earning another MVP. 34.7 points per game last year, career high. 5.6 assists as well, a career high. Nurse really unlocked that aspect of his game, allowing him to be in positions where he's not just doubled all the time and is trapped in bad positions along the baseline or in the corner. He was really the hub of the offense, and they ran things through him. So Nick Nurse was able to get Embiid to play, again, before he got injured, the best we've really ever seen him play. And same with Tyrese Maxey, who in the 2023-2024 season, career high, almost 26 points, career high, over 6 assists, and was still efficient despite the big jump in scoring. And of course, did win most improved player that year. The thing I always ask myself when it comes to coaches and GMs getting fired, and should the Sixers in this case fire Nick Nurse, is would another team or other teams who have openings rush to hire this guy? For Daryl Morey, to be honest, I don't necessarily think so. If Morey does get fired and there's some teams who are looking for a GM, I'm not so sure that we would see another team rush to hire him. Now, would he eventually get hired? Maybe. He's been around the league for so long. He is respected, but has never been able to really win the big one with the Rockets, now with the Sixers. And there's some questions about his team building philosophy and team building strategy. For Nick Nurse, I do think a team would hire him very, very quickly who has an opening. You look at, teams like the Nuggets and the Kings and the Grizzlies, these teams that have head coach openings. I would think that Nurse would be at a top of those head coaching lists. So that's why I'm in favor, and we've talked about this before, of Nick Nurse staying around. Even if it's a bad year next year, I still like him as a coach of this team because of what he showed me when there are healthy and available bodies on this squad. For Daryl Morey, hey man, look, it's up to you to put this team together. And he's made some good moves in the past. I don't want to completely dog on him, but like we've seen now, James Harden is still playing very well for the Clippers. There's a lot of guys in the playoffs right now playing well that are former Sixers. And that at the end of the day falls on Daryl Morey. You have to get this roster right because you made the big moves to bring in Paul George and extend Embiid. So, look, this is on you. You're the one controlling the roster. You got to put together a roster that can compete next season. Before I up on out of here, be sure to give us a follow on 76ers Now over on our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram at 76ers Now IG. Plenty of short form content goes up there on that platform. And then over on my Twitter at Jake Chipper, always talking Sixers and other, NFL. If you're an Eagles fan, just give me a follow over there. Love to interact with all you guys and hear from you guys as well. Be sure to hit that sub button, and we'll see you next time here on the show.